So the same thing carried forward, periods 5, 6, and onwards. If you had a really bad month in July and your revenue decline was 70%, we'll say, you're going to be eligible for that 60% subsidy. In addition, when you look at your calculation for August, the worst you're going to do is that calculation from July. So it's always a 2-month calculation that we're looking at, with the exception of that top-up subsidy. That top-up subsidy is calculated differently. Now, when we're looking at calculating wages under this Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy Program, for periods 1 to 4, you were required to have baseline remuneration for each of your employees. And when you calculated the payroll subsidy, you were getting either 75% of your baseline remuneration, or if that baseline dropped significantly, you could actually get up to 100% of the actual pay in that period. I encourage everybody to use the CRA calculation spreadsheets when it comes to calculating what your benefit is. You can go on the website, you can download their Excel document. In the background, you're going to have to do your own calculations, but input your numbers in there. That will tell you exactly what your benefit for this program is. You just have to do your revenue and your wage calculations on the side. But that baseline remuneration was key for the first few periods. And then it was thrown out the window once you got to the new rules, which were effective period 5 onwards, with the exception of non-arm's length employees. So non-arm's length employees are either the owner or a family member of the owner, where you were subject to restrictions. Those restrictions were put in place so that you couldn't increase your subsidy by increasing your wage fictitiously once this program came in place. So they didn't want people who were normally paying themselves $3,000 a month to increase their salary to $8,000 a month just to have access to a greater benefit. So the rules are slightly different for arm's length employees and non-arm's length. This program, when I talked about the temporary wage subsidy program, it was based on when the wages were paid. The Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy Program is based on when they're earned. So if you see in the bottom right-hand corner, this is a direct quote from CRA's site. If your pay schedule doesn't align with the wage subsidy claim period dates, you will have to manually calculate how much you paid the employee in respect of each week. So when it comes down to salary employees, it's very straightforward. The amount that they earn in that week is the same as they earn every week. If you're looking at hourly employees, you're going to have to look at a daily basis. What did they work in that day? Multiply it by their wage rate, and then you have to add on holiday pay to that, and that'll give you their daily earnings. So we've been doing these calculations for months here based on what an employee earns on a daily basis to line up with your claim period weeks. So there's the baseline remuneration information, how to calculate your baseline. So baseline remuneration was initially calculated as your earnings from January 1 to March 15. So there's 75 days in there. So again, you had to prorate for if the pay period straddled December 31st, January 1st, that cutoff date. And if your pay period straddled March 15th, you had to back out the pay after March 15th, that amount earned, and calculate the average weekly pay or bi-weekly, depending on how you're doing it. Afterwards, there were some businesses that they weren't paying their employees in that January to March period. A good example would be some construction industries that in Alberta you're not going to be operating in that January to March period. It's too cold. So maybe your seasonal business wasn't operating. So they gave you a secondary date range to calculate your baseline remuneration, which was March to May. And then for other periods going forward, they've modified that period. So here's just a straightforward how you calculate it. This is the new period.
Just to clarify, we pay our employees their vacation and stat pay as a percentage with each semi-monthly payment period
Yes.
included in the calculation.
Yes, absolutely. So if you're paying your employee and you're paying out vacation pay at 4%, then you would add that 4% vacation pay onwards, add that 4% vacation pay onto their weekly earned income. However, if you're banking that vacation pay, if they take a day off in that period, they're going to get paid for it. So you would include those hours in there. So vacation pay certainly is eligible for this subsidy. So we talked about the CEWS top up already. Okay, so on the T4 reporting. So the CRA added additional reporting requirements when you're filing your T4s this year. Now this reporting is for all employers. It doesn't matter if you claim the wage subsidy for those employees. Doesn't matter if you claimed either the temporary or the emergency wage subsidy, I should clarify. All employers are required to report these box numbers. And again, with the changes coming on October 9th, I'm sure they're going to expand on this. So in addition to reporting your employees' employment income in box 14 of their T4, there are 4 new boxes that have been created. March 15th to May 9th, May 10th to July 4th, and so forth. These boxes are to the benefit of CRA, and that is what I believe 100% of the reason that you are reporting this. It's so that they can audit the CERB program, that $500 every week for 4 weeks. They want to ensure that anybody who claims CERB didn't earn more than their $1,000 during that 4-week period, and this is where they're going to be able to pull that information from. So when you go to file your T4s this year, unfortunately, there's going to be a little more work that goes into this. When I talked about the temporary wage subsidy, that was paid in that time period. The Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy is earned in those periods. This T4 reporting goes back to the temporary wage subsidy. It's the amount that you paid between March 15th and May 9th. So if you wrote the checks out, if you did the electronic transfers to your employees on March 15th, it falls in there. If you made the electronic transfer on May 10th, it does not. This one is kind of a scary one when we first ran into this. They're starting to audit the wage subsidy program here. And I'm not overly concerned about providing the information that we use to calculate revenue and wages for all of these businesses. What concerned me was the extent of information that the CRA is asking for when it comes to these audits. So we're getting phone calls sometimes within the hour from filing these wage subsidy claims, and the CRA is asking questions. So somebody is keeping an eye on every single one of these subsidies that is being filed. And if anything stands out as different from your previous filing, they will phone in and they'll follow up. From there, if your answers don't line up with what the program requirements are, you're going to get one of these letters in the mail.
Okay, so I've got 2 more questions. One is, if paying semi-monthly, do we have to split the earnings, say for May 9th, or is it any earnings calculated during that period?
Sorry, can you repeat the start of that, Sandra?
If paying semi-monthly, do we have to split the earnings for, say, May 9th, or is it any earnings calculated during the period?
So if that's referring to this T4 reporting, then it's based on the pay date. So if you're paying semi-monthly and the cutoff period is May 15th and the pay check goes out, I don't know, standard that I've seen is a 10-day lag, so they get paid on the 25th of the month, then at that point, it falls into code 58, which is period 2. It's when it's paid out. So that's for the T4 reporting purposes. In the wage subsidy, the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy purposes, you would actually have to prorate the number of days in that period, what the earnings were to May 9th. Earnings not paid.
And codes 57 to 60 are the amounts paid during that time period.
They are the amounts paid, yes, cash out of the bank during that time period.
Okay.
And that it will correspond with that Canadian Emergency Response Benefit that employees were eligible for, because that program was on a cash basis. So were you paid more than $1,000 during that period?
Right. Does a mid-month advance count for employers who pay monthly?
That is kind of a tricky question because the CRA doesn't look at mid-month advances the same as most employers look at mid-month advances. The CRA sometimes wants payroll remittances sent in on those mid-month, which in that case, it actually qualifies as a payroll period. So if you're submitting your source deductions in line with your advances, then I would say, yes, a mid-month advance falls in that time period, it has to be reported. If not, I would line it up with when your payroll remittances go in. All right. So continue to interrupt me, Sandra, if you have to. So here's the CRA audit letter. It's quite an extensive audit letter. They call it a limited scope audit, but I'm going to flip through the slides here really quickly. I'm not going to go through much of this in detail, but you'll see that this isn't really limited in scope. So question one. So we're looking at about probably a 7 to 8 page letter. Now they're asking for some of the standard stuff that you're looking, or that you'd be looking at when you're doing your wage subsidy claims. So they want your revenue calculations, which we would have expected that they're going to ask for your revenue calculations. They're going to ask for support for the wages earned during that time period. So whether that's timesheets, they're going to ask for support for the wages that you paid. So they're going to want your payroll, whether you're doing it out of Sage or QuickBooks or however you're doing your payroll. They're going to want to see canceled checks related to that, e-transfer documents, bank statements, that sort of thing. However, there's some oddball items that they're asking for in this audit letter. And again, this isn't meant to scare you. I just want to make sure that everybody has this or is aware of this information and has it available in case they get audited here. They are asking for governance documents. So if you are a member of a board for an organization or for a business, that board needs to approve that wage subsidy claim. So they want to see board minutes that approve whoever is filing for this wage subsidy to actually submit the filing. They want agreements that you have in place. So 1B there, partnership agreements, banking resolutions, director resolutions that demonstrate your decision-making process and approvals for making the SUS claim. So they want to know that those directors, that board that approved this claim, they are actually, per your agreements, entitled to make the decision to apply for it. So that also comes down to if you're applying for any of these special elections on how to calculate your revenue. They want a shareholder register, so they want to know who owns the business. They want a detailed organizational chart to know who are the entities in the corporate group, what entities are related or associated with your business. Now, what they're looking for there is the ability to manipulate your revenues during this time period to qualify for the wage subsidy. They want to know details about any changes in your corporate structure in 2019. So if you had any reorganizations, if you transferred any assets into your business, that sort of thing, they're going to look for either legal agreements or supporting documents related to those corporate structure changes. They want agreements for intercorporate loans or advances, as well as employee loans. So if you were helping your employees out and you were giving them loans during this period, they're going to start asking for those agreements in there. They want your revenue recognition policy. So if you're deferring revenue, so for example, if you sell subscriptions that are on an annual basis, they want a documented and signed off revenue recognition policy saying that we recognize the revenue as it's earned over the 12-month period, or we recognize the revenue immediately upon receipt because this contract is it can't be canceled. Looking at holdbacks, they're going to start looking at, so in the construction industry, if you're billing out your initial 90 and there's the 10 holdback, are you reporting your holdbacks as you did in the past? Are you reporting 100% of your revenue in the month and reporting the holdback receivable, or were you manipulating revenue and not reporting that additional 10%? They're also asking for employment contracts through this audit. So I don't know how many people actually do have formal employment, signed employment contracts with their employees, but they will be looking for those. Consolidated group financial statements, eliminating entries and business numbers for those related businesses. They also want an explanation of why you were using some of these elections. So for example, if you chose to use the prior reference period exemption or election, why did you do so? What was the logic in making that decision? And they're looking for your initial incorporation documents. So this list is quite exhaustive. There's a lot of information that they're looking for. So if you do get this letter, you're going to have to provide this information to CRA. And if you can see right in the middle of this page in bold, it says request should be not more than 10 business days. So they're going to require you to gather all this information up within 10 business days and submit it to them in order to justify your wage subsidy claim. So that is the wage subsidy revenue, qualifying elections, everything like that. I know it's quite confusing. It's quite detailed. My slides weren't exactly laid out to go through this, so I'm expecting that there will be lots of questions. So maybe, Sandra, is there anything in the queue there that we need to address before moving on?
Wait, I do have one question that came up. Let me just find it here. Can you repeat the $1,375 per employee part for the TWS? Is it not based on total wage paid to each employee?
Yeah, I think the easiest way, and I should have, maybe I can pull up.
And Lisa also came up with, it would be great to get the entire list of audit requirements. Is that available somewhere online?
I do have that available and I will show you. So is Excel showing up on your screen right now?
Sure is.
Okay. Okay, so say you have 8 eligible employees. You get $1,375 per. So you're going to end up with a max benefit of $11,000. If your gross payroll from March 18th to June 19th falls at, let's do $120,000. You're going to get 10%. Your benefit is $12,000. So at that point, that is your temporary wage subsidy benefit, $11,000. It's the lesser of, and I should put the third one on here, max per employer is $25,000. So that's the lesser of the 3. That's what you're entitled to. Now, if you had 10 eligible employees instead of just 8, it goes up to $13,750. And now the lesser of the group is $12,000. It doesn't matter that one employee, say this employee was only paid $10,000 during that period. Their 10% comes out to $1,000. And if you calculated that same thing out amongst your 10 employees, it would come out to whatever it comes out to. That you aren't limited to the lesser of that 1,000 or 1,375. It's simply 10 employees times 1,375. They're not looking for the details on employees 1 through 10. It's 10 times 1,375. Now on the gross payroll, if it's 120,000, doesn't matter who it's paid to, how it's allocated amongst the 10 employees, it's 10% of that 12,000. So hopefully that answers the question. That's not how I initially understood the program, but that's how it's calculated on that PD 27 form.
So is this a total for all 3 periods or per period?
So it's your max eligible employees during the 3-month period is the way it's worded on the form.
Perfect.
So if you had, if at one point you had 10 employees, 10 is your number.
Okay. Lisa found a sample letter for the CEWS online, and she's given a link for that.
Yeah.
And okay, and Drew, just to be clear, we only withhold 10% of the taxes paid, not 10% of payroll, correct?
No, it's 10% of the gross pay.
Okay.
Is what you can hold back up to that maximum per the calculation. However, if you have a low paid employee and you run the payroll deductions calculation, they may be subject to CPP and EI withholdings, but there may be no tax withholding requirement. At that point, you can't claim your temporary wage subsidy or you can't withhold based on your remittances because you have to submit your CPP and your EI. Your 10% can only come out of the income tax withholding.
Is there a problem if you don't have employee contracts?
I would say cross your fingers and hope that the CRA letter doesn't come to you. And in the meantime, work in the background and try to get those employment contracts drawn up.
Okay.
And you'll see once we get to the Canada Emergency Business Account application, you may want those employee contracts there anyways.
Okay. We have 2 employees who each own 1/3 of the business. I assume that they are ineligible.
I'm assuming that's for the the emergency wage subsidy calculation. They are not ineligible. You just have to calculate their baseline remuneration from January 1 to March 15th. So if there was no payroll paid to those employees in that time period, then unfortunately, no, there's going to be no subsidy for them. If they were on payroll at that time, then yeah, absolutely, you can get a wage subsidy for owner managers.
Okay. If you had a different number of employees each month in the 3-month period, how do you report that? Is that still the maximum number? Like, so if you had 10 one month and 6 the next month and 12 the last month, you still have to report just 10?
The form says total number of eligible employees employed from March 18th to June 19th. By looking at total number, I would assume if they were employed during that time period, but I'll clarify that. And if we can send that out later, that would be great.
Okay. After you submit your PD 27, how do you deduct your subsidy from your monthly contribution?
How do you deduct your subsidy from your monthly contribution? So if you're doing your payroll remittance and there's sufficient tax withheld, so say you withheld from your employees $1,000 and you calculated your temporary wage subsidy and it was $250, you would just pay the government $750 rather than the $1,000 that you withheld. Now, to complicate things, it has to be your tax, remember. If all of your withholdings are CPP and EI, you cannot reduce your remittance. In that case, if you file your PD 27 form and you have not been able to reduce your remittances, the government will have a refund available to you. You can apply to the government for that. And when you file either when you file your T4s in February or when you file that PD 27, they will give you the refund back.
Is there a time limit to claim the temporary wage subsidy? So even though the claim period has passed, if they did not withhold in those months, could a business withhold those amounts from their remittance now from that period?
Yes, initially they announced that the time period to adjust that withholding was going to be I believe, the end of the year. However, now with this PD 27 form, it doesn't really matter. It's going to come down to when you file your T4s, there's going to be a discrepancy there between what you withheld and what you remitted. And they need that form in their hands to reconcile why are these different. If you haven't withheld it, get that PD 27 form in before you do your T4s.
That looks like all of the questions.
Okay, so the last one on the wage subsidy, oh man, we only have 6 minutes for SEBA. The last one on the wage subsidy here is there's an attestation agreement. I have copies of it in here. If you are filing for the wage subsidy, this is one of the items that they're asking for. Sorry, my mouse just died. I can't click through slides. This is one of the items that they're asking for in that audit. So you have to provide this to them in a timely manner. So when you're filing this, have this signed.
So Drew, I'm just looking at the time, and I really apologize. I didn't actually schedule it, but I have a presentation to give at 1 o'clock.
Okay.
And so I'm wondering, would it be possible for us to sort of end here? It was a lot of information anyways. Let people sort of think about it. And would you come back?
Yeah, we can certainly do that.
So, so I'll make sure that everybody that's on this call gets the opportunity to come back, and I'll send them all an email letting them know when we're going to do sort of a second half. They did ask if they can have your slides, and I don't know if they're proprietary or whatever. And so if that's the case, that's no problem. But if after the next time we meet and you go through the remainder of them, if you want to provide some of your slides to people, then I can make sure that happens.
They are not proprietary. So if you want to send them out even after today here so that people can look at them, and then, I mean, if they aren't available for the next one, at least they have the slides available.
Perfect.
So yeah, if you want to send them out there.
Okay. Well, I'm so sorry. I apologize that I had something else set up. Otherwise, I would stay all afternoon and listen to you. You're amazing. Thank you so much. And you're so patient. Your answers were very, very clear. Really appreciate that. I will make sure that everyone knows when we're going to run the second half. If you think of other questions in the meantime, please hang on to them. And I'm sure that Drew will answer them at the next time we meet. So thanks everybody for being here. Drew, thank you so much.
Yeah, not a problem. Yeah, thanks everyone for coming, and hopefully chat next time.
Yep, and I'll be in touch with you after I finish this presentation, and we can pick another day.
Sounds great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.